everyone. I'm Emma Buggy, an artist and teacher of compassionate communication and active listening. I've created this podcast series for you as a way to introduce you to some of the methods that I hold dear to my heart, and also to share some skills and activities that may be helpful for you in order to invite compassion, understanding, honesty, and harmony into your lives and your relationships, both with yourselves and with the people that you love and you spend your time with. You can find out more information about my work and compassionate communication, which, by the way, is also known as nonviolent communication, or NVC for short, via my website at www.empathart.com. All references mentioned in this program will be included in the show notes, and you can also find links for activity aids such as feelings and need lists, which you can download and use in the activities that we will do together and when practicing at home. So I have my wonderful friend Paulina with me here today, and she is a person who helps organizations to understand and follow human needs through research and service design. She's been looking into the method of nonviolent communication for the past 5 years, and it's really in the last 2 years that she's been studying it quite intensively. So that's quite similar to me, actually. Paulina! Do you want me to call you Pau or Paulina?
Whatever. I go by both.
Brilliant. So Pau, my dear, do you want to tell us, what's your story with NVC? What was the reason that you got into learning this method? What inspired you? How did you start?
Well, what really caught me the first time around is I did I was always interested because I was always kind of bought into the idea that blame just isn't such a great dynamic. And so owning my own emotions seemed always like both safer for me and a safer for others way of being in the world. But the thing that really caught my eye was about 2 years ago, I did a workshop with Yoram, our teacher, and it was a workshop in connecting in conflict. And at the time, I was, I guess, kind of dating this guy. And I mean, my goodness, except for my father, I think I never, ever fought with another human being that much. And after coming out from that workshop, it was really the first time that we were able to somehow hear each other. And, the relationship still burned down because of that fire. But it certainly gave me like a wow, like maybe conflict actually can be something that is beautiful and something that I don't run away from, and something that helps me to get to connect more rather than to leave pain in my life. And also, like, the thing that I so appreciated in that workshop is that, very often when getting into an area of study, I find that there's like different interpretations and there's a lot of complexity, and my mind goes like, oh, it's kind of just confusing, and I'm trying to hold the essence. And in that workshop, I just really got like the simplicity of it. Like it's just empathy. It's just listening and just being honest and just connecting with oneself. Like those are the basic kind of things that I took away, and I was like, okay, I can run with that. So I did.
So it was this simplicity of just listening, like really calming down to that place of like being present with what's happening within me, what's happening within you, that really attracted you.
Yeah. And really seeing the payoff, really, like just the payoff, and also seeing the, like the inner gymnastics of being with intensity. When something intense is happening in my life, to not shrink back, to actually become curious and to find a way to stay in a state of like presence and listening and lean into it slightly, at least. rather than run away or become uncomfortable and get into all kinds of automatic behavior.
Yeah, I guess that's a really important part as well, because I remember that when I first started learning NVC, nonviolent communication, I went through stages where I was thinking like, oh, I need to stay away from conflict, or conflict is bad, which is so hilarious because, one of the foundations of NVC is that we try to get away from this idea of good and bad, right or wrong. But somehow within me, I had this idea that conflict is bad. And so I need to do anything I can to put out the fire or not express my inner fire. But it's been such a relief to actually learn that, like, no, I can lean into it and see the deliciousness and the beauty that's behind all of that. Rah! And through expressing it authentically, it's not about shutting up those, what we call in NVC, jackal voices, so judgments and analysis. It's not about shutting up those voices. It's about, how can I hear the real beauty that's behind what those voices are saying to me?
Yeah, and for me, like what you're saying in a way was really another huge moment of inspiration and almost like buy-in, I would say, to NVC, because for me, I did many years of, playing with meditation, playing with whatever things, and for me to understand that those inner voices, I need to listen to them just as much as I'm trying to listen to what other people are telling me. And this idea that progressively, if I can welcome these like kind of sometimes twisted ways of speaking to myself, that progressively maybe I can make more friends with more parts of myself, and that progressively maybe my brain will be slightly different. That, like I can see the habits are different now. Like I can see that even I did this experiment yesterday where after literally like years, I started to go back into meditation, and I noticed that that instead of like just letting the thoughts go, I started to actually get into like what are the feelings and what are the needs, and kind of just giving myself empathy in that space, and just harvesting that.
Yeah. So when you're saying empathy, just for the people who might be really new to NVC, you're talking about like leaning into what is it that's behind my thoughts, as you said. What is it that I'm really longing for? So these are our needs, yeah?
Yeah.
And so from what I'm hearing from you is like just by really being present with those different voices and having this sense of self-acceptance and love towards all of the facets of who I am. It's not just acceptance, it's like I want to celebrate and really give space to all the facets, all of the voices within me. Yeah. Then comes this ability to be more present, and then comes this like opening up to understanding what's happening in my inner world.
For sure. And that's a prime intention. And when the reality of that isn't there, when I'm in conflict with myself or telling myself off, it's difficult to accept sometimes. It's difficult to accept what's going on, but welcome to life.
Yeah, I mean, we all do that, don't we? And it's not about stopping that from happening, is it? It's not like, oh, from now on, I'm never going to tell myself off, or from now on, I'm never going to like bark at my partner or my friends, and I'm never going to say anything bad to them ever, or never be violent with my language. It's not about like turning those parts of ourselves off. It's about like, how can I develop an awareness of the thoughts that I'm having, the language that I'm using? How can I slowly step into this practice of like, being curious about the parts of me who speak sometimes in a way that I really don't enjoy.
Yeah. And when you say that, like what I'm present to in a way is that, for us to be curious, for for that to be a response in a way other than, we talked about before in some of our conversations about the fight, flight, and freeze responses that we so inherently have as humans. Like the curiosity part comes only when we feel safe, I think. And for me, like NVC is in a way creating more safety to really to express everything. And that's such a tricky road. But it's a road that for me is so worthy of walking, like to really I don't know, like even in my house, like to be able to say everything. It's hard, but it's bringing so much more aliveness in the relationships. That it's okay to have conflict.
Even if it's not easy. It's like you're still wanting to really welcome whatever's there, whatever's alive, whatever's real, whatever's happening for me, for you, to have place and to, be welcome to be spoken, even if it's really tough sometimes. Yeah, so I guess that leads me to my second question, which is like, what would you say are the challenges that you have met through learning NVC, and like, what have you learned through those challenges as well?
I mean, for me, I think the challenges are chiefly just retraining myself, like really retraining my reactions and my responses, and especially when it comes to when I'm upset or when I'm in conflict with someone. Especially, I feel like this conflict thing keeps coming back, but it's like being with intensity, and it's just like this. For me, the challenge often is really to slow down. To slow down and to, take a breath or whatever and just be like, okay, what is going on here? Like, what is going on here? Before I speak or before I walk away or whatever. And it's the challenge for me really, this is more of a personal, everything is a personal challenge, but it's really to have the courage actually to speak from that space, to really, like, once I've tuned in to what's going on, to become vulnerable there. And because very often when I'm, speaking with someone and I get triggered, there is pain there. And instead of, going into, okay, I'll just do whatever you want, or into, oh, never mind, I didn't, like, it's not a big deal.
Dismissing
or whatever, dismissing myself, or just going the easy way out, basically. I'm like, the challenge really is to slow down, to find myself, and then somehow to bring myself. In that moment when I bring myself, it's a very, very sometimes precious and shaky moment for me, because it's like, especially if the other person is like, for instance, if I'm interrupting someone because I'm like overwhelmed with what they're saying, or I can't listen anymore, so just wait, or like, just like, you're a terrible person for saying something like this, or like, when I make requests, or
so those were like little jackal voices internally.
There's like all kinds of voices of like, don't do this. And then when I do, it's such a moment of such softness, because like I could get shut down in a moment, in that moment of vulnerability. And it's like, I think the world of nonviolent communication, also in the realm of like asking for what I want, or expressing, has brought me to this space where it's not just about the things that I'm requesting. It's not just about what I want. It's like, it's about the connection, actually. And I'm always worried, like, wow, maybe this is just too much for the other person. Like, oh, here she goes talking about her feelings again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. And sometimes I'm like, okay.
Yeah, so in a way, is it like sometimes there's this question of, well, nonviolent communication is just one strategy that helps me to bring connection. And maybe in this moment, using it, at least in its classical form, which is the observation, feeling, needs, requests, maybe that doesn't really create the connection that I want with the other person. Maybe there's another way. Maybe I can have the essence of NVC internally, but I might not express in that way with that person because connection is my absolute goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, there's always this like, not always, but there's sometimes like this old idea that there is a conflict between self-expression and connection. That if I actually self-express, the connection will be gone.
Yeah.
But what I'm learning more and more is if I am allowing myself to come out, if I am holding that space, then very often it's welcomed by others. And it's kind of about creating this space where, I exist in the world and I can speak what's going on because that is what's going on. And I want everyone to speak truth. Ideally in ways that aren't awful for everyone to receive. But truth and honesty about our internal lives is so beautiful for me. Like when I hear truth from other people about their feelings and needs, I'm like, wow, like thank you. Even when they're like, it makes me fall in love with people.
Yeah. It's such a gift, isn't it? And it's like also, when you were just saying that, it just reminded me of a recent conversation that I had that was really quite difficult. And I really wanted to just listen to this person with empathy. And I knew that the things that they were going to say could be very difficult for me to hear. But I just really, really checked with myself 100 times. Am I super, super empty? Can I actually hear and not take anything personally and hear it as a beautiful expression of what's really happening in them? And they surely did express some things that would normally sound like so blame and judgment. And I found it really beautiful. I was really continuously for like a few hours sitting and listening, and I was falling more and more in love with this person in front of me. And I have to say, even after so many years of studying NVC, like in a conflict situation, like a real conflict situation, that takes a lot of skill. Like I really need to prepare myself to get to those moments of like, can I fully listen and just like really, really be there all the way through the jackal language, the blame and should and you that I'm hearing, and just stay with what's happening for you. What's going on in your world? I'm curious.
It's like building muscle.
Yeah, exactly. It's like going to the gym. You go to the gym and you do your weights to get your muscles looking lovely and strong, and you feel strong and you can start like, lifting heavy things. And you're like, yeah. And it's the same with this. It's like you're building this muscle of like awareness and compassion and presence and listening, both inwardly and outwardly.
Yeah, and safety and fun for me. Like, I mean, when I'm with you, actually, like I saw all kinds of things about you, but it's like it's just so easy. It's just like, when I'm with Emma, I'm like, I'm gonna get the shit that's going on. I'm not gonna like be fluttering around and talking about things if she doesn't want to be talking about these things, and I will tell her otherwise. And there's just this kind of ease of just communication that can be so refreshing. My God, like people spend so much time, and I've spent so much time in my life going around and being like, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, is the person actually listening? Like, am I listening? Do I want to be here? Like, what's going on? Yeah. And this thing is just like, clarity, we know what's going on.
Absolutely. It's like so, when you said refreshing, my heart just was so like, oh my God, yes. I really, every time that I'm around my friends who have been studying NVC, even if it's just at the beginning of it, and also not NVC, there's this general sense of like self-awareness and this commitment to curiosity and looking within. It's honesty, absolutely. And it's so about honesty. Then it's such a relief. I suddenly feel like, oh my God, I have permission to be fully me, including the parts that might not be so welcome in other places, or maybe I tell myself that they're not welcome in other places. But suddenly here it's like, oh, I can be fully myself and you can be fully you. And if something doesn't work, I trust us. And I have that so much with you. I trust us to find a way that works for everyone. And that's just like, so nice.
Yeah, I think what you're touching on is also another thing that I loved learning from Liv Larson is that it isn't about what he wants or what somebody in the group wants. It's always about listening to the group and finding out what works for everyone, actually. And spending the time to find that rather than just going to what to do, because like our brains are so fixated with like solving quickly. It's like we jump over an entire world of emotions and connection, what's actually going on in the room to just get a solution. And like, I think, if you look at our world right now, we are in such a state of malarkey, partly I think because we're not understanding what is going on. We're trying to solve it desperately. And
yeah, and you're talking specifically now, because now we're in the period while we're recording this of COVID-19. Are you talking about just in general in the world?
Oh, in general.
In general, yeah. In general, there is this state of like, let's put the
is
plaster.
Politics working?
Yeah.
Like, is the school system working? And if not, then what do we do? But it's like the what do we do is just like, it's like we're so stuck in our patterns that there's no space for novelty to enter. And I do think that novelty enters from a place of, as a researcher, I know that comes from a place of really understanding what is going on. And then you can have ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. And the really understanding what is going on is I guess, coming from this place of, again, slowing down and looking at each person or each situation and finding the needs, the needs underneath, and being open completely to creativity around finding strategies. It's not like, I think we're so used to in our culture, like, I want something to work my way or in my favorite way, and if it doesn't happen in my favorite way, then I freak out that I'm never going to get that need met ever.
I don't know if this will be relevant, but what I see very often in organizations and in personal relationships is that we are so caught in this culture of rushing and this culture of, there is a hierarchy, whether that's in family or in companies, that somebody had an idea that something was a good thing, but they never consulted, they never included the rest of reality. And so you end up getting caught in getting to places that never meet the needs of the broader system. So you're
it's always like fix the next thing and then fix the next thing. It's like we apply the plaster to the wound, and then there's another wound and we apply another plaster, and then we never get to the point of like seeing if the last wound has healed, and maybe it's getting septic back
we
there.
Don't learn.
Yeah.
Because there's no time.
And then on the other hand, it's like if we want to see the beauty in that, in the fix it mode, is that like people and human beings are really trying their best with whatever they have in front of them to really take care of society, to take care of themselves. There's this real sense of like wanting to contribute, wanting to do something.
Yeah.
And, sometimes it can be through what we would label as corruption. So it might be like, I want to do this more out of a place of making money for myself. But again, what's the beautiful need behind that looking for more money? It's self-care. It's like protection. It's safety and security. Yeah.
Yeah. Take time to save time.
Yeah. That's something our teacher, your Mossensen, says quite a lot. It's really like you can take time in order to save time. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons for me when learning NVC was like I was trying to like hurry towards finding the needs, or hurry towards like finding the feelings in the needs, or get to the, you know, request really quickly. But actually, the more I slow down, the more I stay with curiosity, the more I check in with myself and the other person, then it comes naturally and in flow. And then I save time in the long run, because then I'm not like, this rushing creates more conflict.
Yeah. It just keeps going in the same loop over and over again. Yeah. Like, you know, couples that have the same issue for 10 years or.
Yeah. I can really resonate and understand with how that happens. You know, it's like, even with this learning of nonviolent communication, it's a strategy, and it's not a surety that through learning this you'll never have conflict again. And again, it's not about getting rid of the conflict at all. It's about how to stay with it, how to keep being curious.
Yeah, it's in a way like a resilience. An openness and a resilience and a commitment for me, actually, to like, I'm gonna see what's going on. Yeah. I'm gonna try to stay with it and like welcome it and see it differently. Yeah. Like explore other angles other than what I'm already like so prone to seeing.
Yeah, or what I'm used to. My favorite story that keeps popping up and has felt quite comfortable until now, because it gives me the opportunity to keep seeing things in this way. But I realize that it just isn't doing me any good. It's not serving life in the way that I want it to.
Yeah. It's like how much more time am I willing to spend in the uncomfortable comfort that I created?
Yeah. You know? Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember who said it to me a while ago, but it's like, you know, oh, this jacket, it's really scratchy and rough on my skin, but it makes me look hot. And I'm going to keep wearing it because I want to look hot. But I'm walking around getting all scratched and like, you know, sweating in it. And it's just like, waiting to take it off at the end of the night. So it's like, okay, maybe it's time to get a new jacket.
Or get a different lining.
Yeah, or get a different lining for the same jacket. Cool. Yeah, so I guess I wanted to ask you, moving towards the end, we've talked about like your journey through NVC. We've talked about why you got into this method, the challenges that have come up, what's important to you in NVC. And I guess the next thing I'm interested is in like, how has it impacted your life? What has changed? What are the major things that you can see are different for you since beginning to learn and until now?
I think there's two things that come to my mind. One, which is I'm just much more honest. Well, there's many things. I'm much more honest in terms of saying what's going on. Or what's not going on. And I'm much more curious. And what I mean by curious is curious about what's going on and the other people. And it's given me almost like a translation mechanism where people say something and it allows me to go on more underneath their words and to see what's going on in them and to really listen to the full picture rather than get lost in the words. And lastly, I think it's given me really like some kind of a strange setup inside of me where when I'm in pain, whether that's sadness or anger or some kind of other sometimes uncomfortable emotion, there is this thing that started to come up, which is like I don't know how to call it, but it's like a voice in me that is a voice of empathy that is trying to hold me, essentially. And it's a voice that's trying to understand and to bring comfort. And it brings, it's kind of a voice that's essentially, it's giving me empathy, and it's kind of analyzing what's good for me. And sometimes it's a voice that gets me to make requests for empathy from my friends in my community. And sometimes it's a voice that will just be allowing me to just be with what is. It's a funny internal conversation that happens.
Yeah.
Like there's a voice that's like, oh, but I'm like this, and they did this, and da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, sweetie, what's going on? And then we start this dialogue, and it's kind of like I don't know, it's some kind of a inner therapist or inner mediator. Sometimes it's a nice little system.
Just for the audience, I get to see your face, and I'm imagining a little inner version of you that's coming up, and that's just wanting to comfort you in a way. And
especially when you're speaking of comfort, like when the voice in me is like carrying a stick, it kind of just sometimes manages to take this stick of like, you should do more, or you should be more like this, or whatever, and just be like, sweetie, are we still doing this?
Yeah.
Maybe let's sit down for a moment, shall we?
So invite you. It's like you invite yourself for a cup of tea.
Yeah.
A good chat.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I love that. Brilliant. I really love this idea of inviting ourselves for a nice cup of tea and a friendly chat to see what's really going on behind all the stories and the shoulds and the
as uncomfortable as it might be sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, even if it's a very uncomfortable cup of tea. Okay, so I guess my last question, my second to last question is, like, is there any major learning point that, like, if you could put it in a sentence or two, because, some of the people listening to this podcast, this might be their first or one of their first experiences with nonviolent communication. They might be thinking about whether they want to learn this a bit more, or whether they want to go and get Marshall Rosenberg's book or take a beginner's course. So, if you could sum up like one of the main, not one of, like two or three maybe main learning points that you have taken from NVC.
I think for me, it's really the simplicity of, I think what Yoram called the jobs of a human being. And the jobs of the human being is to either engage in self-connection or to express honestly or to really fully listen to the other. And to... at least when it comes to expression and listening, to not mix the two. To really try to, like, I guess that the thing that follows from there is really, really learn how to listen, because listening is something that is an art, actually, and it's an art that that takes practice and it takes patience, both when I'm listening to myself and to other people. And it's, it has a lot to do with like creating space to listen, which means not having thoughts, for instance, or being able to maneuver my internal landscape as I'm listening to another human being, and just trying to treat interactions as in some sense, like a meditation, like really to stay present.
So it's like the art of listening, in a sense.
Yeah, and when I think of the art of listening, and when I think of like the inspiration and the hope that I have for NVC, really is like I really like when I imagine a world where kids are taught these kinds of skills, where kids are taught how to be with themselves and how to be with others, it's like, wow, imagine the kind of world that we would live in. Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, maybe it's just for me that it works to be listened to and to speak in these kinds of ways. I understand that people might have different ways of speaking and different ways of being with others that they enjoy, but what a nice little skill to have, to at least give it a chance. And I also imagine, like the art of listening, like, man, like there's so much that I missed out in school because I just didn't listen. I was so busy with caring about how others perceived me, or I was too busy with thinking about other things, and I just didn't pay attention. So it's like, it's a training both in relating, but also in paying attention. Like really pay attention.
Paying attention to life.
Yeah, exactly.
Paying attention to life. Yeah. So I guess my last question is, and I guess I almost already know your answer to this, but I'm going to ask you so that you can answer it for yourself. Would you ever go back to before learning NVC?
I mean, when I think of it, it's like when I think of earlier in life, and like I feel that it was just so much more lonely, like really, whether it's because I didn't know what was going on inside me, or because I wasn't speaking it, or because I wasn't able to have these, when I was younger and before that, I always kind of enjoyed a lot of kind of ideas conversations and deep conversations, but like having dialogue about emotions a lot back then, but there was something that just brought so much more connection in the everyday, and it's just like, wow, like, thank you. So no, I wouldn't go back because that would be more painful. And yeah. I'm a human. I still try to avoid pain whenever possible.
Because you're human.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do a quick example of the NVC process. And I think the main part that we'll stick to for today, because this is really just an introduction to NVC, is translating the judgments and the analysis that we usually use in everyday life into feelings and needs. Wow, well, Pau, I think that's it for today. Before we go, I just would love for you to share what are your needs met for this discussion, and I'll share mine because that's a practice of NVC.
Sure, yeah. So what I got out of this is I got to spend time with one of my favorite beings in the world. And so this connection with you, and also inspiration, because it connects me more with NVC and what I want to study and what I want to create for myself and others. And fun. Yeah. It was fun to kind of swim and play in the different ideas and topics of NVC and of life with you.
Yay, thank you. Oh, it's so nice to hear that. Yeah, it's so nice to hear the feedback and to hear what needs it's met for you, because for me it really met my need for connection as ever, because like you said, you're one of my favorite human beings, and I just really enjoy like the flow of conversation. So again, that's another need. It was like so easy to just talk with you about this subject. I almost forgot at moments that I'm recording this for a podcast. So that's such a relief. Yeah, and it really, really met my need for inspiration. And that's partly because, actually fully because of the fact that the way in which we were in flow and the way in which you were talking and sharing so openly really inspired me to like do more of these conversations. And
Yay.
it really met my need for confidence as well in that sense, because before that I was thinking, you know, oh my God, this is really scary. I'm being recorded and I'm recording myself interviewing, and will I be good enough? You know, there was that jackal of, will it be interesting enough? And like just hearing how engaged I was, and I guess both of us were because the conversation went so easily, really gave me the confidence to sort of say, okay, I can do more of these. This is,
yay.
Yeah, it's going to work. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this with me today.
I feel very honored.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So do I. Thank you, pal.
Much love, Beauty.
Much love, darling. I'm curious how the show has been for you, and I'm super excited to receive any feedback, any requests you might have, or any questions regarding NVC and the topics that we will be covering in our future podcasts. If you are an NVC practitioner and you would enjoy taking part on one of these shows in the future, then please contact me via email at emma.empathart@gmail.com, or you can find me on Facebook via my practice group page, where you can also find other videos and links, support materials, and a space to practice your skills with like-minded people. Heart-to-Heart Communication NVC group on Facebook. Or you can check out my website www.empathart.com for more information about past and future workshops, as well as one-to-one empathy sessions and more. I really appreciate the time that you have taken to listen to this podcast. Thank you for joining me.